Hello everyone and welcome back to Great Broadway Fan's YouTube channel. I'm Luke and today I'm bringing you episode 3 of my 4-part mini-series on movie musicals. Excuse me. As I talked about in my last update video, which was just posted yesterday, I went a little bit off track because of my overwhelming amount of work in school, but I am back, and this is a very exciting video because this is part 3 of the 4-part mini-series, the top 10 movie musicals that deserve a remake. And I put this up to a vote on both Instagram and a Broadway World message board thread. And basically, I wanted to get your guys' opinions on movie musicals that are based on stage musicals that deserve a remake, whether they're unfaithful to the original source material, whether they're tonally different from the original, whether music was cut, whether the cast was bad, the direction was bad, for whatever reason. This is the top 10 movie musicals that deserve a remake. And once again, this is completely up to your vote. You voted for these. I tallied them up. And so here we go. The top 10 movie musicals that deserve a remake. So number 10 is Oliver. And I can understand why this one needs a remake, because the 1967 Oscar-winning film, it is beautiful. I don't know, rewatching it as an adult, it just doesn't feel like a welcoming, warm musical. It feels very stale. It's very, it doesn't feel very welcoming. And the cast of children is just, I think it's really, really bad when you have children who can't sing and they're being dubbed by other people. I personally am the kind of person that if you can't sing in a movie musical, then you shouldn't be cast in a movie musical. But the reason why Oliver's at the bottom of the list is because I think that in 2016, it would be extremely impossible, near impossible, for Oliver to ever get remade. I think the only way that you could do it is either if you filmed a professional stage production and released it for home viewing, or if you did it live on television with an exclamation point. But that's why Oliver's at number 10. It's good, but it could deserve a remake, especially with a cast of children who can hold their own vocals. So number 9 is Newsies. Now, interestingly enough, Newsies is getting filmed. The stage version of Newsies is getting pro-shot with professional cameras. It was the national tour that stopped at the Pantages in LA recently, and the original Broadway cast came back to do a one-night-only production in front of a live audience, and that's being released, I think, through Fathom Events, and I'm not sure exactly when they're going to do it. Sometime in 2017, I think. But I seriously do think that Newsies, the stage version needs to be done cinematically on film, and I think that it could work. I think it would be mountains and heaps and bounds better than the original Disney movie, because it started out as a Disney movie in the 90s, and then it was turned into the stage version. But like Oliver, Newsies might be a little bit hard to do, simply because there's just not that wide of a demographic. I mean, you would probably have to get someone... you'd have to get a huge, big-name studio with big-name talent, and then it might work. But Newsies is such a beautiful musical that it deserves a film adaptation. Thank God it's getting professionally filmed and archived for the rest of history. Number 8 is MAME. And I think that everybody can be in agreement that the film adaptation of MAME starring Lucille Ball is a bit of a disaster. Everybody keeps saying that Angela Lansbury was robbed for reprising her Tony-winning role in the film adaptation, but let's be perfectly honest. Back when Warner Brothers was making the movie version, Angela Lansbury was not a household name, and they were not going to sink all this money into a movie musical with an unknown actress at the time, which is why they cast Lucille Ball. And the movie bombed horribly with both the critics and in the box office, and MAME was the last movie that Lucille Ball ever did. Now, MAME is on this list because it desperately needs a remake, but it's also low on this list because, like with Newsies and Oliver, the source material would be so difficult to market that I think the only way that you could do it is if you either had Bette Midler or Meryl Streep play MAME, and then you had other Hollywood and Broadway talent in the supporting roles. Because MAME is one of those musicals where you have to have the actress's name above the title in order to be able to sell this. I mean, that's the reason why Angela Lansbury, that's the role that made her a star. It was Angela Lansbury in MAME, and then she became a huge star because of that show. I've never actually seen MAME on stage before. The movie version is really, really dull and boring to get through, but MAME deserves a remake. Number 7 is South Pacific. You guys voted for South Pacific. And it's interesting to note that there actually was going to be a film remake of South Pacific. But it was back in 2013, and it was when Michelle Williams was attached to play Nellie. Hugh Jackman was going to be, the French character that Nellie falls for. And then Justin Timberlake was going to be the lieutenant, but that movie never got made. I think that South Pacific is, looking from this list, I think that South Pacific is the only movie musical on this list, in my opinion, that doesn't deserve a remake. I think that Rodgers and Hammerstein's film adaptations are pretty near to perfection. Although I would love to see a remake, I would love to see a big, new, lavish production made. Or just release the Lincoln Center production on DVD. They did it for PBS with Kelly O'Hara and Paolo Shazat back in 2009, 2010. They released it on PBS, and I saw that version, but if they didn't release it on DVD, and I think that they should. Okay, number 6 is A Little Night Music. I have to agree with fans. This is one of those beautiful Stephen Sondheim musicals that just suffers from a really bad film adaptation. It's not... and here's the thing. All of the talent involved is very, very talented. Hal Prince is an amazing director. But when it comes to the movie version, it just didn't lend itself well cinematically. And I don't know if it ever could. Although people want to see A Little Night Music be remade because the movie version, with the exception of Sondheim's beautiful score, is a really bad film version of this otherwise gorgeous stage musical. I think the only way that you could do this is if you either pro-shot it on stage, sunk a ton of money in big-name Hollywood talent, or did it live on television. That's the only one of 3 ways that it could be done. And I think that the first might be the only option that we have. But you fans voted for A Little Night Music. All right, number 5 is Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. Now, I firmly believe that Sweeney Todd desperately needs to be remade because I do not think that the Tim Burton film adaptation is a good adaptation of the original Hugh Wheeler, Stephen Sondheim stage musical. What makes Sweeney Todd so brilliant, in my opinion, and in the opinion of other people, is that Sweeney Todd is a black comedy. It balances that fine line and that walk between being grim dark and being really, really funny. It's a very dark subject matter that is played for laughs in such a beautiful and hilarious way. And I think that with the exception of Into the Woods, Sweeney Todd is the best Stephen Sondheim score that's ever been written. And I would also like to see... I would like to see a director's new take on it, not be so grim and dark, because Sweeney Todd, like I said, is a dark subject matter, but it's not supposed to be a grim, dark, somber musical. It's supposed to play the drama for laughs, and it's a very unconventional story where you have your protagonist, which is doing something illegal, but you side with him, and the antagonist, which is on the side of the law, that you don't side with. So Sweeney Todd is such a layered, beautiful musical that desperately needs a better film adaptation that is more faithful to the original source material. Number 4 is Rent. And I think that the main reason why people voted for Rent, and I kept seeing it in the comments, is because oh my gosh, it's just the director Chris Columbus just did not do a good job. He made it too squeaky clean. He casted all of the original Broadway performers with the exception of oh my gosh, I don't even Rosario Dawson. I know I'm pronouncing her name wrong. Rosario Dawson. Derp. But it's just everybody in the movie was too old to reprise their Broadway roles, and it didn't feel like Rent. It didn't have the tension and the dynamic storytelling that the original stage version has. The movie is just so glossy and colorful, and it doesn't have the same weight that the stage version has. I think if you did a low budget version with no name talent, if you just had brand new fresh faced talent that were in their 20s and you just did a low budget version, like you know how The Last 5 Years was done as an independent film, if you did an independent film adaptation of Rent with all new talent and just released it based solely on the source material, that could be a really, really good high quality film, in my opinion. Okay, we've reached the top 3, and the number 3 spot is The Phantom of the Opera. Oh my goodness. This movie is proof that Joel Schumacher should never work in Hollywood again. He just does not know how to handle anything properly, especially this musical. Now, I seriously do have problems with The Phantom of the Opera. But the film adaptation is so terrible that it takes everything that was remotely good about the stage musical and just makes it even worse. I think that there needs... here's the thing. What needs to happen is that Andrew Lloyd Webber needs to give up the rights and have it be given to a studio that will put a proper director, sink all the right amount of money into it, cast people who can actually sing, and then make a good quality film adaptation, because The Phantom of the Opera is a good and at times beautiful musical. It does have its flaws. I think that the plot is atrocious and the characters are one-dimensional and boring, but his score really is fantastic, and it deserves better than the film adaptation that it got. And I think that The Phantom of the Opera deserves a better film adaptation. That's it, plain and simple. But Andrew Lloyd Webber cannot be involved. He can't. Let go of your material, please. Okay, number 2 is Cabaret. And here's the thing. It's not that the film version is bad. It's not. It's one of the most It's one of the most beautiful film adaptations of a Broadway musical that I've ever seen. But here's the problem. Number 1, it was not faithful to the original source material. It changed all of the backstories, changed a lot of the details of the main characters, and just, it was the bare bones structure was there, but only 6 of the original 26 songs made it into the film adaptation? That's terrifying. Like, that's really, really bad. And number 2, we now live in a world where after the film adaptation came out, there was the beautiful, stripped down, raw, gritty revival that was directed by Sam Mendes and Rob Marshall. And that stage version, I think, is what deserves to be captured on film. If you brought back any actress who played it in the most recent revival, whether that was Michelle Williams, Emma Stone, Sienna Miller, or if you casted a different actress like Emily Blunt or Anna Kendrick in the role of Sally Bowles, and you brought Sam Mendes and Rob Marshall back to direct a film adaptation, I think that could be really, really good. Have it be entirely in the style of their revival, but just shot on film. Gritty, raw, realistic, and that could be fantastic. And finally, the number 1 movie musical that you, the viewer, the voters, wanted to see get remade is A Chorus Line. And I can see why. I am not a fan of a chorus line. I saw it when I was in middle school. It was on its national tour. It came to San Diego, and I saw it, and I really did not like it. But the film adaptation is horrible. It completely flies in the face of the original source material. It doesn't even understand it. And it just it changes so much of the plot in favor of Cassie, who, even though she is one of the main characters, she's not the main character. And I think, like with Rent, if you did a low-budget, independent film adaptation with brand new, fresh-faced talent and just released it on the weight and heft of the source material itself, maybe it could be a better film version. I don't know if you would still be able to either set it in the 70s or if you would set it in the present, but I just think that a chorus line, like majority of these musicals, just deserve a better film adaptation. Even if the material itself is not perfect, these film adaptations are not faithful. So that is the top 10 list. We did have a couple of honorable mentions. Hello Dolly, Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella, and The King and I were close. They were runners-up. And if this had been a top 13, those would have made the list, but I put those as honorable mentions. So thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to give it a big thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button if you are not already subscribed. You can follow me on social media, my Twitter, @GreatBroadwayFan, my Instagram, @GreatBroadwayFan. Please go subscribe to my other YouTube channel, Great Movie Fan. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to stay tuned in next week. I will be releasing episode 4 of this 4-part miniseries, which is movie musicals done so perfect that they should never be remade. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.